Hi, everyone, and welcome to Legal Limelight. Today's guest is Tamara Rabenold, the owner of the women owned and led investigations and brand protection company, Vodra International. I am so excited to chat with you, Tamara, today. Thanks for coming on the show.
Absolutely. Thanks for the invitation. Excited to be here.
And this is actually our first restream on Legal Limelight. We usually do these only on Instagram Live, but we're streaming live now across Facebook and YouTube, Instagram. So very cool stuff.
Technology at its finest.
It's really great. It's really good. It makes everything so easy. So I'm so excited to see you. We've been trying to schedule this for maybe over a year because I know you've had some Instagram issues. I've had some Instagram issues, but I'm excited that we can finally chat today.
Yes, me too. Me too.
Okay, so why don't we just get started with tell us a little bit about Vodra at Vodra. That's my Jersey. The Jersey girl in me wants to say Vodra. It's Vodra. It's pronounced way more beautifully. Tell us a little bit about how you became the owner and what you guys do.
Okay. Well, how I became the owner is a longer story. I'll hit with what we do first. So we are private investigators or professional investigators that specialize in intellectual property investigations, and that is all we do every day, and we love it. It's our core, our heart, our soul. And so that's working with law firms, that's working with entrepreneurs, that's working with brand owners from the itty bitty to the massively global and international in supporting them in whatever that looks like when it comes to protecting their intellectual property, brand protection, dealing with counterfeits, infringements, retail arbitrage, diversion, as well as the whole gamut of, okay, trademark use investigations with law firms or anonymous IP acquisitions, if that's a domain, social media handle, whatever. Ironically, we had our own issues with our Vodra social media handle with Instagram being blocked. So we're not immune to issues, even though I still don't understand why. But all good. So that's kind of like runs the gamut on like what we do on that side. And as far as how I became owner, I'll try to make it really short. What's crazy is I started where Vodra actually opened their offices. So the company's been around since 2003, and they opened up across the hall from a advertising and marketing agency where I worked right out of college. And so my degree is in integrated marketing. And marketing is always what I've loved, which is now I'm kind of more in that role than an investigative role. But as it turns out, marketing is a perfect background for an investigator because marketing advertising, it's kind of like a degree in BS. And as a private investigator, you often have to have those kind of, and yeah, BS helps you when you're dealing with subjects of investigation. Um, but anyway, um, I brought Vodra on as a client for the advertising agency, and we were kind of the zany marketing girls that would do anything in the name of creativity, from chair races up and down the hall to drawing a picture of an eyeball and putting it on their door because we just thought it was so cool. So, anyway, brought them on as a client and developed their first corporate identity package, logo, website, brochure, all of those printed things when you had them way back when, now 21 years ago. Um, and at the holiday party that year, one of the owners invited me out. Like they had a little holiday get together, invited the whole building. I happened to be leaving right at the same time as Howard, one of the prior owners, was leaving, and he was like, "Hey, would you want to grab a drink at Big Al's?" I was like, nah, I should get home, you know. And I was like, oh, why not? And like that decision to say, okay, why not? Let's go have a drink was like a pivotal moment because it ended up in having a glass of wine with Howard and him saying, so, would you ever want to be an investigator? I was like, I had expletives in there, but yes. And I interviewed with him and Randy. They were business partners at the time. after the holiday season, like I guess it was in January, and they actually gave me the option of if I wanted to be an office manager or an investigator. I was like, no, I'm here to be an investigator.
Wow.
And so that's how it started. And I joined the company in February of 2004 when it wasn't even yet a year old. And obviously still here. And through the years, working cases, working investigations. I mean, I started as a PI associate. There's a whole kind of process that goes into becoming a fully licensed PI in our state. But worked my way up the ranks, working a ton of investigations, all different kinds. Ended up into management. Also along the way, ended up falling in love with Randy, who is also now my husband. So that's now fast forwarded 2015 when I became CEO, and we got married. And so then, like, now it's been 17 something years, and was ready to retire. We thought we might sell the company to another party, but that was just so hard when I've been almost the boss for so long, or like felt like it was my baby, even though it was his and Howard's baby. And then he had bought Howard out years and years ago. But anyway, and it was like, God, I've been so close. And so he was ready to retire. So we decided and worked out a deal with talking to our CPA and our business attorney, because the other thing is like, I never wanted it to be like I was given the company. I've worked here and worked for so long and so hard. Like I wanted to buy it. I wanted to own it in like a way that wasn't like I slept my way to it. Like,
and you bought it, right? You ended up
I bought it. I bought it. We had a official like seller's note and all of that, and he is officially paid off as of the end of last year. So that was a big thing. And so he retired January 1 of 2021, and I took over as owner. And here we are, just running and gunning.
And it's only, 2021 was not that long ago. I think that was like around the time where I met you, and my friend, our mutual friend, Emily Borich, said when we started having major problems with a client we could talk about later, we needed so much help. They had a massive counterfeiting and knockoff issue that my cat is like right here. Okay.
Oh,
like,
I love
literally. It. That's what happens when you record live. But she was like, oh, you need to meet Tamara. She's the best. She's super active. She's always in touch. She does all the stuff. So you meet with her. And it was to the point where like I didn't even know half of the things that they needed at that particular point, because the evolution the problem just took off to the point where I just knew we needed people who this is all they did. So I turned to you, Tamara, and started working with Ryan, who was fantastic and who is fantastic. He jumped on. I almost like pulled him in like my own associate because we needed help. And so I was able to train him on like thinking like, someone who's supporting an attorney while also being an investigator and on the brand protection side, which was awesome. So we got to work really closely with your company, and it was a game changer, helping that client really build out their whole brand protection program. As they continue to grow, they still have issues, but we, as we see it, it's not something that goes away. It's not like Nike and Louis Vuitton's problem never goes away, but you build a program and a process and a team, and you guys you are integral to that piece. So I'm grateful for it.
Oh, well, I loved how you would say, okay, we're building the airplane in the air, because they were taking off so fast and had already gotten so much recognition, and then had the counterfeit issue. So glad to be a part of it, even in those crazy moments. So it's great.
Yeah, it's what we're seeing a lot now. I'm going to the Shark Tank reunion because a couple of our clients are Shark Tank. They started on Shark Tank. They blew up on social media. Now they're going from being a small business to a medium or a large business almost overnight. And some of the companies there, they don't even want to be on TikTok or Instagram because they're scared. They're scared to have the same problem that the client we worked on together is facing. But you know, I tell people it's a good problem to have. I'm curious, Tamara, what your experience is with these like small to mid-sized companies in today's like modern digital world. What you're seeing on the counterfeiting and the knockoff side.
Well, I mean, a huge thing is that I completely understand and respect that they don't want to go on to TikTok, TikTok shop or wherever. But the thing is they're already there.
Yeah.
And they probably don't even know it. So if they're not there in an authorized way, then it's the counterfeiters, it's the infringers, it's also the fans. It's the ones that, you know, I mean, we've been dealing with a number of very similar these brands that have gotten super popular, um, and are just dealing with all kinds of challenges. Didn't necessarily have the infrastructure set up, so we've helped with customs recordals and also recommending other strategies when it comes to training, and then all the online enforcement aspects and kind of setting things up. But another piece of it has been like that, the consumer awareness and engagement, and trying to kind of find a way to strike that balance when it comes to, okay, well, yeah, we get that you don't want to be on this particular platform, but you're already there. And you don't want to talk about counterfeits or the potential of counterfeits with your customers, but they're already talking about it because they're doing unboxing videos, or they're comparing it because they bought it on Alibaba or AliExpress or wherever. So it's like trying to, and that's, I don't have the solution with that.
It's there.
I mean, we learn something new every day and get asked new questions and have different ways to kind of like, change and evaluate, like, okay, well, is this going to work? Or, kind of putting together different strategies based on what that brand is experiencing in the moment. But, I think that's making sure they're keeping an eye on those channels, that even if they don't want to be in them, making sure they're not already there, and then making sure that they're set up to take related enforcement and takedowns and that kind of thing, or working with somebody that can assist them in that when it's appropriate. And if nothing else, it's a great intel. Like it's all your eyes, your eyes and ears out there for the brand. It's just how do you want to monitor it? How do you want to use it to the brand's advantage? Because it can also end up being it's a blessing and a curse. It's an asset and a liability. Like it's
Yeah.
everything has got the two sides.
And it's just a part of being a popular brand. I love what you said though, that you're constantly learning and it's constantly changing. Because this is for anyone listening, like who does brand protection and you're vetting vendors, like this is how you know that they're the real deal. Because we have done interviewing companies and vendors that they say, oh yeah, we'll get them all down. We'll solve the problem. It's going to go away. You work with us in a month and boom, all of them are gone. And it's like, well, who's the them? And they're permanently gone. They're gone forever. From where? Which websites? In which country? And like you probe, and it's like, okay, these are just tech startup companies. They're not built by lawyers. They're not built by experts. And but they have all the shiny bells and whistles and the salespeople that are selling executives and CEOs a bag of goods. They're promising the world, and we see this where like the CEO comes in and says, "Oh, these people told me they could solve the problem, and we don't have to pay anything." Because it's it's free, it's contingency. And then the lawyers are like, well, I don't know about that, because it's such a, it's not a simple solution to a complex problem. And when you look at like the cases I said, Nike and Louis Vuitton, these are some of the biggest brands in the world. They have the best legal teams, the best brand protection programs. The problem doesn't snap your fingers and go away. This is something that you need to build a defensive program that you systematize and have a procedure and a team to handle, so that as the technology evolves, which it feels like it's progressing every single day, have people like you, Tamara, who say, okay, we know we're monitoring, we know it's evolving, and we're here to learn, and we're here to listen and watch and use the intelligence against them. Like, I love that you said that.
Well, and it's not only systemized, but it's prioritized, because you cannot go after everybody. And it's like you know, yes, there's some amazing tech solutions out there. Like everybody kind of has their role and has different things they can do to benefit a brand depending on what they're looking for. And like, what does a win look like? What does success look like to those higher ups and those C levels that are the ones that may be the loudest, or maybe it's the it's the distributors and retailers that are screaming like, who are you, like, where
Yeah.
is the win? Like, what are you trying to achieve, and trying to figure out what that is so that you can prioritize and be like, okay, we may have a huge issue in Thailand, but do we care? Like,
Yeah.
in that marketplace, like, so, because the online landscape is so vast, it's like, okay, figuring out the channels that are most important to where your true customers are, where the counterfeiters are, and then prioritizing and saying, okay, now how are we going to then these ones that really are these potential very meaty targets, what are we going to do about them? Like, how are we going to work back to the source? How are we going to like get smart about the different ways and different strategies to handle it? And I know you've had a lot of success with that for some of your clients too.
Yeah, so you touched on a couple things. Is like number one, who are the people? Who are the people that are hiring you, and what are their goals? And sometimes I've learned this. I've learned this the hard way. Sometimes the person hiring you is not the person you're dealing with. It's their boss. So now you have different levels. And if the person above them doesn't understand the issues and isn't willing to either invest time and money, or take the time to understand the complexity and figure out which are the priorities, it's really challenging. It's challenging for in-house counsel. It's challenging for outside counsel. It's challenging for brand protection teams. The other thing is, when I was an intern at fashion companies like 10 years ago, we would get one report from the outside counsel that would show all the flea markets, right? In like a couple page succinct, here's all the flea market seizures that we did. And I don't even remember any online monitoring when I really first started. But then it was a little bit of online monitoring. It was eBay, and then Amazon became big. And now the vendors you work with, they're monitoring hundreds, if not thousands of platforms on top of standalone sites, on top of social media. So when you talk about the vastness, it's to the point where it inundates a brand and it becomes analysis paralysis. And without strategy and without people like us, Tamara, who are experts in this, which I think is what we do best, is we help a company look at it and then drill down and find the 20% of people who are causing the 80% of harm. It's the 80-20 rule. And like, this is why intelligence and investigations is such a critical piece in brand protection. It's not just working with a software company to do mass takedowns or working with a lawyer to do all litigations. There's so many pillars to a broader program. You want to talk a little bit about that and like how the intelligence plays a role?
Sure. I mean, because if you don't have the investigative piece and the intelligence behind it, I mean, there's all these different kind of metrics and different things that can be pulled by different tech agencies. But it's like, if you don't know what it means to the bottom line, none of it really matters.
Yeah.
And so it's really, and then of course, I hate the phrase whack-a-mole. And it's so common when you're just constantly going after one thing. And I mean, they just are constantly popping up. And really, that's always going to happen. But you're just kind of going after the master mole, like trying to go after the biggest guy. And so really having that strategy with multiple kind of players that are like, okay, here are all the different resources, because if everybody's working in their wheelhouse and there's a collaborative effort towards that joint end goal, and like we all are aligned with the objectives, gosh, it's such magic when it works that way. And we've had, I mean, through the years and especially currently, we really have some just fascinating things going on with clients and opportunities to really kind of integrate with a lot of different pieces of the business, a lot of different service providers that we all have the same goals. We're all just going about it in a different way. And so then we have that intersection where we really complement. And that's when it's just like on fire. And it doesn't mean that we get it right all the time. It doesn't mean that the criminal referral is like a shoe-in or the lawsuit is going to be a slam dunk, but you're that much closer to having a successful outcome, especially when everybody knows what they're looking at. And that, I mean, I have so much empathy for the brands and for these, these dreamers that have put their heart and soul into everything, and then it's getting knocked off everywhere.
I had a client like literally cry on the phone. It's they're using her pictures, like it's so egregious, and it's happening on such a mass scale that it used to be where like a brand may not be affected so much, but it's destroying their revenue stream because everyone buys online. Like everyone shops. 10 years ago, I don't even think luxury stores even did e-com, and now the whole world you could buy luxury products with a click of a button. So yeah, it's a different world.
Yeah, oh absolutely. And just like the mass distraction and the mass, like everything that's coming at consumers all the time, every day, just the barrage of it. It's like, okay, how do you make sure that your brand stands out? And of course, this is when like I love kind of how I get to play marketing still.
Yeah.
To a degree when because at least I understand it. And really at this point, like strategies have changed so much. So I know enough, maybe enough to be dangerous. Maybe on the legal side too. I'm just kidding. But it's like there's just so much coming at that customer. It's like, how do you make sure the brand rises above it and can kind of cut through it, but also then all of these other things that are constantly going at them that are the counterfeiters and the infringing and the spam. Oh my gosh, the fraud and the spam that's like been stealing people's identities and information and putting malware on their computers or it's just endless what the bad actors will do.
It's endless. And I thought as a naive, young person 10 years ago that, oh, every company has this. Of course, every company has their IP in order. Of course, every company has brand protection. And really, like, we work with big brands, and they're like, yeah, no, this was on the back burner. It hasn't really been affecting us so much, but it's an invisible problem. Unless you have these smaller clients where it's like threatening to destroy them. For a lot of bigger companies, it's this invisible, silent siphoning of millions of dollars out the door, and it becomes a slow creep because as you dump mass counterfeits and fakes and knockoffs into the marketplace, it catches up, and it could destroy the value of the brand and the consumer trust and recognition. And it's what's happened with some fashion companies, if you've watched over the years, that don't do anything. Then they wait to hire a Tamara and a Francesca until now it's a cut artery and we have to stop the bleeding, versus like a small laceration that we could have fixed.
No, and it is a long-term game. Like, you can have those short-term wins, and we all have those short-term wins, and it's like we have short-term wins daily, but it's like it's the long-term like strategy and trying to figure out like, okay, but now they're doing this, and okay, now we're going to get ahead of them because now we're going to go at it this direction. And to your point about the kind of the quiet siphoning or brand saying this is on the back burner, maybe some brands have the luxury of putting it on the back burner if there's not an imminent threat to the health and safety of the general public. Like when it comes to, airbags, when it comes to some of the, health and safety issues and regulatory issues around pharma or, skincare, hair care, like all of those, like they can't ignore it. Like they may not know how hard it's hitting them, but it's like they have to be kind of out in front. So it's like that, you know, I feel like some of the luxury brands, because there isn't necessarily, I mean, yes, there's all of the things that funding terrorist organizations, like there's all the things that the money from counterfeit supports, but it may not be a true, like, not as much of the threat on the actual buyer itself in that moment. It's all of the things down the road that it can do. So then it is easier to be like, it's this quiet thing that they kind of
It's
ignore.
easier, but it ends up, it's the
Oh.
death. It ends up becoming the death because what, you know, I've been able to watch some of these companies that you walk down the street and you see someone wearing a shirt and you're like, oh, it's probably a fake, because there's so many fakes. Like, what I'm not going to want to, why am I going to want to spend, you know, $100 on a t-shirt when I think that most of them are fake? It's a problem.
Mm-hmm. It's that perception.
Yeah. Well, okay. This was amazing. I actually am gonna definitely send this to a couple people who are like, I've been thinking about brand protection. Here you go. Don't wait. But thank you so much, Tamara. And before we go, I always ask someone, what's advice that you would have given yourself? Let's say like you're yourself starting out in your career on day one as an investigator. What's advice that you would now go back and give to yourself?
That I would have invested in my professional development sooner and not waited until I owned a company to do it. Because it makes me wonder like where I could be or where the company could be now had I done some of the things that I'm actively doing and just kind of reframing things. And also just never forget and maintain that like learner's beginner's mentality of like, you don't want to have tunnel vision.
Yes.
Where now you can't see your way outside the box because you're like, okay, no, here we are. This is our lane. It's like always looking at, okay, how can I do this differently or better? It's like better every day. Like how can we twist this? How can we change the outcome or improve the outcome, even if it's just a little bit, and taking those like baby steps, because it's like, it's baby steps. It's not, somebody may look back and be like, oh, wow, they were here and now they're way up here. Well, it was a path. So just like sticking to it. And then sometimes it is just a grind, and you have to recognize that too. And you can always start again that next day. So
it's great. I love that you gave yourself that advice. And I do want to say that like you're already ahead by even just being on here, being on LinkedIn. It's the future, and it's still a minority of attorneys. And once it becomes popular, though, once the 99% catches on, it's going to be way harder. So you're able to get ahead still.
Well, like I said, I appreciate the invitation. Glad we were able to do this, and also test out all your restreaming on all the different platforms. And just, again, it's awesome working with you, and really appreciate the opportunity to be on here.
Thank you so much, Tamara. Thank you guys. We're here. This was Legal Limelight. We're here every Thursday at 12 o'clock Eastern Standard